So vibe coding is not for real software developers, real engineers. The AI tools are for them for assisting, but vibe coding is not. Vibe coding is for those people's personal projects and silly things that don't matter.
Welcome to the CGPro Show. This is episode 1, and let's get started and jump in. I'm Ed Dawson-Taylor, co-founder of CGPro, and the first thing I want to do is just welcome you all to the show. This is a brand new experiment. We're broadcasting live, so expect all the fun that comes with live in front of a TV audience. This is our first episode, so we can expect some experimental segments, and we would love to hear what you think. At the end of the show, we want to make this be a contribution to the community, but we also want the community to contribute back to us and tell us what you think that works, what doesn't work, what would you like to see more of, what would you like to see less of. The reason for creating it is that we're in a crazy time and we're building things. We're all building things. We're all trying to figure out where all of this is going. There's all of this disruption happening within media and entertainment and all the industries that I could think of. So we wanted to create a show where there's a more open format than the podcast that we've done previously, and have it be some more conversational, have guests, talk about a wider scope of things within computer graphics, technology, gadgets, the world, the industries. First thing I want to do is introduce my co-host, Mr. Andy Cochrane. Let's bring Andy in.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm excited to get this going. Let's dig in.
Let's do it. We're here, and Andy, who is a former senior vice president at the Sphere, and does all kinds of awesome experimental stuff in computer graphics.
Weird stuff. It's not an insult. I do weird stuff. I do the things that I do a lot of things that are not things yet that I find interesting. So did a ton of VR, and obviously Sphere was a big chunk of 3 years, and that was fun. But I do a lot of things that are weird when I'm doing them, and then become really normal. Like 10 years later. Make a lot of other people a lot of money after we've run into every possible speed bump and wall.
Thank you, Andy. We are also joined today by our very special guest, Mr. Tim Riopelle.
How's it going? How's it going, everybody?
Good.
Nice to be here.
Welcome, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a quick introduction?
So yeah, I'm Tim Riopelle. I'm currently working for a company called The Outsiders. I'm tagged as a UE generalist and compositor, but I'm also doing a lot of exploration into AI and some of the stuff we're talking about today, and just creating apps and creating sort of tooling based around AI, and kind of just exploring this crazy sort of thing that's been happening the last while. But yeah, I've spent the last about 3 years sort of in this realm and kind of been around for the whole explosion of it. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Awesome. Great to have you here, Tim.
Oh, thanks.
So a quick run of show today. We're going to do a quick interview with our special guest, Tim, in a second. And then we're going to flash through some industry updates. We're going to look at what's going on in the world. We're going to go through some news of the week. We are then going to go through our highlight this week, which is vibe coding. I know we're the vibes. This was called the Vibes Edition, episode 1, the Vibes Edition, for a reason. We are going to explore what vibe coding means, what it looks like, and show you some of the stuff that we've been doing in it. We will then go through gadget of the week, and then we're going to go through the crazy corner, which is a segment that will expand over time, hopefully, but just wacky stuff that is just weird and interesting and maybe not as useful, but deserves a mention. Cool. So let's jump in. I'm going to start off with a quick interview to our special guests. And Tim, you are a experienced visual effects artist. You have jumped into AI with both feet and both hands. And you've also been kind enough to join us as an instructor at CGPro. Probably other things that I should mention as well. when introducing you. But tell us a little bit about what caught your eye through the onset of AI into the computer graphics space, because you've grown up in the traditional side of things, working on well-known IPs and going through the kind of more traditional route in visual effects. And at the beginning of the conversation around that, there was a lot of polarity with AI, causing a lot of people a lot of discomfort and fear and excitement and all of those things. What caught your attention and drew you to it as much as it has?
I think, yeah, a big part of it was I know like when I was at Unity, we had done a little bit of exploration into it, and it was just kind of seeing how you could take stuff like live action plates, or you could see like footage, and we like start to manipulate that sort of thing. And that's when I kind of was like, well, this is crazy, because back then it was like Comfy UI, and it was like really simple. You could only do like 10 frames and then another 10 frames before it like warped into something completely different. So it was like trying to figure out initially like how am I going to work with this sort of stuff, and how like how can we create something like new using sort of this green plate technology, or using that and apply it into a comp. So that was like kind of my first foray. Was like, yeah, Comfy UI was pretty early on. I think that was, yeah, like 2 years ago. Um, and from there, like, it's very similar, right? Comfy UI and sort of Nuke, and all of these other sort of softwares that I'm familiar using. So it was like, okay, this is a very like visual coding, right? It's like node based. It's very similar in what I was doing in Nuke, and building out kind of tooling and connecting nodes to build like a more complex workflow. So it was very, it kind of easily transferable once you kind of understood what the nodes were doing. It was like, okay, this is how something flows. This is how I take it from A to B. And then basically, being a technical artist, you can like start to dive into the code. So what is the code doing? What's the output? And it's just like it just becomes like a JSON file, right, or something like that. And then you can start to pull that stuff out and tool it in different ways, and start to pull that information out. So it kind of, what really interests me about AI is all this stuff kind of already fit into the mold that I'm used to, and what I've done for like the last while in VFX and in animation and tool building and all of this stuff. And it's, yeah, like right after I got laid off from Unity, which was unfortunate, but that's when I kind of had this time to dive in. I had some severance money, which was sweet. Thank you, Unity. But I had a good 4 or 5 months where I was able to just like be like, okay, how is this working? And I start to see things like people releasing Comfy UI inside of Nuke, and that was like my first big thing. That was when I was like, well, holy, like this is crazy. And I still haven't seen a lot of like progress in that. Recently I have. I think it's starting to pick up again, and more people are starting to do it with like WAN
Yeah,
being released.
and vase, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But back then it was like, okay, I'm going to build a image generator inside of Nuke. I'm going to build a single tool where I can restyle an image, where I can in-paint an image using the Nuke Roto Brush. I can draw a sketch in Nuke with the Nuke Roto Brush tool and convert that into an image. Like, I was starting to do all that stuff like a year and a half ago. And it was all the stuff I was seeing, right, in like all these other third-party tools that they were doing and like charging a subscription fee for. But I was like, well, I can probably just build that same sort of
Yeah.
functionality, run it through a Comfy UI workflow, and then, yeah. But that's kind of basically, get back to the question. It's just that I saw it as just an extension of what I was already doing, and just and the toolability of it. Back then there was stuff there, but like even now it's just getting so crazy. It's getting
Did, what do you think the end state is, right, for you personally, like as an artist, as a technical creative, like where is this headed? I know you and many of us are just kind of on this kind of like, let's just see where this goes journey, but you know how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still, I initially got into it because to not be the like FUD, right? Not to be worried about my job, and not be
Right.
worried about, because everyone was like, oh, it's gonna take my job, do all of this stuff. And as soon as I got into it, I was like, I don't think it's going to do that. But in terms of where it's going, it changes every week for me because I'm just
Right.
like Runway, the new what is it called? Aleph or
Uh,
Aleph.
Aleph, yeah.
yeah, Aleph, like that. That's revolutionary to me. Like that's like being able to take footage, even though it's probably not going to be in like the proper bit rate or sort of like sequence EXR sequence, that sort of stuff. That idea to be able to like take an element, repurpose it, or like change it, and have like art directability with like prompting and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. I think, yeah, like I I am kind of scared of it. Like now that seeing over the last like 3 or 4 months stuff like Flux Context and
Yeah.
having art directable models that are
Hmm.
there, that's kind of scary. But at the same time, it's also very cool because now that I use it as a creative, I'm like, this is actually super helpful. I can like take an element out, I can add an element just by like saying, hey, like, and it looks good. It looks well lit. It looks like it's integrated into the scene. I don't have to comp it in there. But yeah,
What is it? How's it helping already in what you do?
I think a lot of the stuff, like what we'll be talking about today, is quick iteration of ideas, especially more on like the vibe and app end. It's like taking your idea, it's like, okay, I can do this, but how do I get this into a tool? And as a technical artist, I no longer have to spend a long time to concept something out, right? I don't need to
Right.
go in and like figure out the Python code to do all this stuff and type all out the interface and figure out the app and things like that. I think a big part of it is like getting a concept out super fast. I find that like someone can be like, I need this idea, and I can just be like, okay, Claude, I need an app, or I need like a React app. I need something web based where someone can interact with it and do this thing. And it's like, okay, here you go, and here's the base, and I can show that person, right? And it's a great transition from idea to concept without the time it takes usually
Yeah.
to do that sort of thing.
What's the scary part? Is it just kind of generically scary, like it's scary good, or what are
I,
your sort of,
what scares me
concerns?
is like the audience, right? The audience
Okay.
is gonna come, so like they're gonna stop caring about all the effort that went into visual effects, right? And all the work that goes into it, like all the details that get
Hmm.
in there. People are just going to start not caring, and they're going to be like, oh, like AI is fine. And like, because I think there needs to be like an appreciation for VFX, right? Because it always gets hidden. It's always the hidden art,
Yep.
and there's a lot of stuff in there. And I think there's going to be, I fear that the audience is just going to stop caring about content that has quality to it, and they're just going to kind of take in whatever is like being put out there. But what I'm excited to see is once more people on board to this sort of stuff, and creatives
Right.
with like the actual ideas and things to like push this in a direction that's that's more creative and less about just like prompting something to get like just as fast as you can. Everyone's so focused on getting something out as fast as you can, that it's just like it's not about that necessarily. You're already saving a ton of time doing this stuff. It's like if you're doing something in 3 days as opposed to like 6 months, like you can take a little bit more time and maybe do like 2 weeks and like see what you can get, and focus on that and build out. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's this whole influencer thing is tough for me to
It's the thing,
watch
right?
because it's because it's
It's a
what's the hot topic is, and people who are actually doing stuff, they're not getting as much coverage and like building out
yeah.
helpful tools. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would offer you some hope on that, that fear front, which is that I see it a little bit, and I'm just kind of, maybe I'm more projecting it than perceiving it, but I think that things that are difficult and do require human effort are going to start bubbling up, and things that are digital and thus, somewhat easy to make or definitely very cheap to distribute are going to start losing value. So I think the things you're concerned about, I I would hope, and I would say that I don't think that it's going to devalue.
Mhm.
I think it'll devalue process.
Right.
Like I think, like, hey, I hand rotoed this shot, across the span of 2 weeks. That's going to be a stupid statement to make.
Yeah.
That's going to be like, it's like, that does not make me value this, this piece of content any more or
Right.
less. But I do think that people are going to start really gravitating to things that feel human and feel,
Mhm.
um, not necessarily handmade, but that it wasn't just a prompt. It wasn't
Right.
just like, here's my JSON prompt and here's my 10-minute short film.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it. I think the audience will run away from that kind of stuff, but I think they're going to towards the type of stuff you are using it for,
Yeah.
more and more so.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that's projection.
Which brings us nicely on to our next segment. We're doing rapid fire interviews. Let us know how this is going. Again, please, we'd love to hear how each of these segments goes. Next segment we wanted to go through is our industry recap. We're going to go through some news of the week, talk about some things we've seen appearing next. But this section is all about industry and what is going on in the industry. What are you guys seeing in terms of the media and entertainment industry or other industries being affected by the new technologies? I mean, was real-time technology was the last disruption, if you like.
Yeah.
Now AI.
It's AI. It's AI. It's the jobs that I'm seeing are a lot of junior positions where they're just generically it's magical thinking a little bit. It's companies that are like, I want to pay junior artist rate for an AI artist that can replace a CG team and prompt to victory. So I think there's if you know Comfy UI, if you're very familiar and comfortable with the sort of the more online services, pretty much everyone seems to be hiring right now for artists that are essentially prompt engineers. I think it's a gold rush. I think it's short term, and I have already started to see those companies kind of try and fail a little bit with that, of just like, hey, the first prompt was really great, but then 2 weeks later we realized we still needed to bring in some traditional VFX artists, and either to work on top of it or to start it over. So I think right now where the jobs are is learn Comfy UI and get yourself a Runway and a VO3 and all these other services account, and start working on it. But those are gigs. Those are not careers. Those are going to be pretty short term. But I think as the VFX companies, in particular, but also companies that don't have existing VFX, CG or 2D departments, are kind of looking for these prompt engineers so they can in-house stuff. There's going to be a little bit of pendulum modulation back and forth that is probably going to settle into a point where the people that came in as prompt engineers with some kind of traditional, VFX, or it could be editing, or it could even be directors or cinematographers, that they're sort of in the room at the company as that reality check is kind of starting to sink in, where you can't just have two people in Comfy UI generate, replace an entire vendor or an entire studio's worth of artists. So that I'm seeing just endless job postings, daily job postings for people that are just desperate for AI generalists, AI specialists, prompt engineers, AI artists. So yeah, I think that's where the jobs are today. And I wouldn't say ignore those jobs, because I do think that there's going to be a reckoning, and there already is a reckoning, where these companies are starting to realize that it's going to require more than just a Runway. Just buy a bunch of Runway credits, and
Right. Well, it goes back to again what you were saying last time, which was if you do what is easy, it's inherently not as valuable. If everybody could do it, then everyone can do it. It's not inherently valuable, as in it might be valuable to the output, might be cool, but if everybody can do it, what people will pay for is what is hard usually, because if everybody could do it, there's infinite competition for those things. And well, I'm also seeing the studios taking on heads of AI, which seems to be a trend. Studios building capabilities themselves, ad agencies building capabilities themselves. That's been going on for a long time. Visual effects companies obviously having challenges. The whole film industry having gone under the challenges that the post-strikes era has caused, with film production being down as much as it has. It's like the AI thing often gets the press for causing that, but it's not. It's typically been just the follow-on from those actions. But I'm seeing also companies hiring for total unicorns and saying you've got to be able to know how to use AI, how to build AI in Python, and how to do C++ and know all of VFX and be a VFX supervisor. Job postings are always a bit ambitious. They always have been, but definitely seeing some of that.
Tim, you're up in Canada. What's it looking like up there? We're both in LA, which is going through a really unique and I would say not great time. But how are things up with you?
It kind of feels the same here. I know a lot of I come from like streaming for animation background, so I did a lot of lighting compositing, and my friends who managed to get like into Sony and stuff like that, that seems to be all right. Like people got like on a lot of those movies and stuff, and they seem to continuously work. But I know a lot of people are struggling up here.
Yeah.
It's definitely been, and like people are seeing what I'm doing and asking me like about like what's the best way to go for this sort of stuff, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm doing this stuff because like I got scared and I wanted to understand it a bit more, and it led to opportunities, but like it's hard to like guide people because I'm not sure what they should be focusing on. I think Comfy UI is a good one, but again, yeah, it's like I come from a very generalist background. I have an understanding of modeling, animation, compositing, lighting, rendering. Like I have a good broad understanding, and that really helps me see how this sort of stuff applies into it, because it all does. Like AI applies to every single factor of what's there, and like I just haven't had a chance to like jump back in, like get into Maya, jump into Maya and vibe code something out, like a light rig builder or something like that. It could do that very easily. And then they have like MCPs now where you can just interact with it live inside of Maya and it will do what you want to do. So like that's kind of the new thing I want to look into is agents or agentic building for this sort of stuff. And that's kind of someone just built one for Comfy UI as well, which I'd like to check out.
I vibe coded with Claude and MCP for Pixera. So you can actually vibe code an MCP, which then allows you to vibe, control an app. So it's that part of it's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, and I think we'll give a little bit of space to some of those things as we go through the week's news. And for industry-wise, also the other thing to wrap up on that, I'm seeing people looking for other stuff to do whilst an industry is going through a challenge. There's no disguising the fact that media and entertainment is going through a challenging time, and yet we know all these skills in using Maya or using Houdini or Unreal Engine, which are used way more widely than they have. And we're seeing almost every industry now being interested in 3D, which is really cool for me. But what are you guys seeing in terms of people jumping into different adjacent industries, etc.?
The VES had a couple of first they had a panel, and then last week or the week before that they had sort of more of a kind of breakout room discussion, really centered on this. Not getting out of visual effects, but broadening your visual effects skills and maybe broadening your concept of what we traditionally think VFX is for: movies, TV, commercial, and music videos. Like those, that's the totem pole. That's how it works. But there's always been a lot of opportunity in games, and now the progression I'm seeing, particularly, I would warn anybody working in post-production away from working in commercials at a vendor. But I'm seeing a lot of that work starting to be, as you said, Ed, spun up as in-house agency teams. And I think we're actually going to start seeing more and more brand teams. So we're going to see Coke, just in-housing, and initially it'll be all AI, and then they'll realize that they need actual compositors and actual CG artists, and it'll get balanced. But I think a lot of that work, the work is not going away in commercials. The money is not drying up in commercials, but the money is moving from a bunch of vendors to a much smaller number of agencies to an even smaller pool of brand-based things. So if commercials is your passion, it's get the heck out of the vendors, get the heck into the agencies now, and keep both eyes open to move into the brands, because the commercials are not they're not going to go away, but they are going to be increasingly moved from where they've sat to much closer to the money, to the brands.
Yeah. Because if they become cheaper to make, then it's easier for them to like establish
Yeah.
teams
Yeah.
internally to
Yeah.
kind of do that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and commercials. I'm sorry, I'm going to offend somebody. Commercials are not art. Or they're not supposed. The people buying commercials, the brands, they don't want Clio awards. They don't want Cannes Lions. They don't want accolades. They want people to buy their stuff. And so the tools and the teams, it's micro studios too that are going to get absorbed and moved into the brands eventually. It's not about doing cutting edge work. It's about selling stuff. And so to a degree, like that money's always going to be there. But I think there's a little bit of a reality check now of like, it's not about, winning awards and doing groundbreaking work. It's about making commercials to sell stuff. And AI, I think, is absolutely art. I mean, on Google, I saw a Grammarly ad and I was just like, oh my God, this entire ad is AI. And also then I skipped it. Like I skip every other every other ad. So it's, that's one thing that I would say work wise. I don't think commercials are drying up, but I do think they're shifting. In terms of who's doing what and how. It's much more AI and it's much more agency and then brand.
Yeah, interesting times, crazy times. Lots of people trying to figure out where to go and what to do. We want to shift into our next section, which is the news of the week.
News, I'll be doing all the music for episode 1.
That might continue into episode 2.
That'll just be the shtick.
We'll see. So news.
I'll learn how to beatbox.
News of the week. Here's the list of things. We're going to do rapid fire. We're going to run through all of this stuff quickly and succinctly, hopefully, even though we all want to talk about it in depth. But Unreal 5.6 is not like brand new news, but a very cool update to 5.6. Being able to build metahumans in engine, the performance updates, there's lots and lots of animation updates. They're really going after the animation side of things, the animation industry, feature animation, etc. But yeah, anything to add on Unreal 5.6 from you guys?
Personally, no.
Next up is Chaos Arena. Arena. There's a contender in town for virtual production. First real competition for doing virtual production in something other than Unreal Engine, and it is coming from the Chaos Group, from V-Ray, which is probably the renderer that I used the most in visual effects, at least the most years while I was in visual effects. Amazing renderer, and it's now capable of doing real-time ray tracing, full frame, and they've done test ray tracing for the win, and it is now going out there on projects.
I'm more excited about this than I am about a lot of things, just because this directly ties into existing 3D workflows and pipelines. Like I can push stuff to Chaos Arena with very, very, very little sort of getting up to speed and training, and installation wise, it's a render engine. So it's as hard to install this as it is to install Arnold or Redshift, and in terms of getting it up and working. If it works in your DCC, it'll work on the screen. That is really appealing. And it's been a long time coming. They've been trying to do this with stacks of GPUs and the V-Ray RT engine. I think it was 2016. They were trying to make this work. So here we are, 9 years later, and it seems like they're going to do it. It seems viable. It's very much alpha, but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, the interesting thing in how much it's leveraging what NVIDIA have done with DLSS and building on top of that. I'd imagine we'll probably see more and more things evolve to real time. One of the amazing things about real time for me has been the real time collaboration as well as real time rendering.
Yeah, I think that's the big part. It's the challenge for virtual production has always been talent, and that talent is also on the production side. It's cinematographers that understand it, and directors that understand it, and producers that understand it. And I think that this is going to hopefully win over some people that are currently a little anti-virtual production because they got burned by whatever part of their first virtual production experience was. But this is you can wrap your head around Arena in a way that is sometimes a little difficult to wrap your head around an Unreal based virtual production. So I think we're gonna see good things out of this. Just artists being artists.
Keep your eyes peeled. Houdini 21 sneak preview dropped, and I know that more is going in if you're at SIGGRAPH, but unfortunately I'm not.
That's happening right now.
Yeah, it is. I wish I was there with all my nerd friends. Houdini 21 just dropped. It's pretty amazing. There's lots of advances to real time, pushing towards real time in Houdini as well. They're really leaning into the AI conversation, being able to train and infer inside Houdini. And there's some. I think the preview just dropped last night, so I'm still catching up.
There's two things on it that I think are really worth pointing out. One, the AI that you just mentioned. It's been really fascinating watching all of the traditional players in visual effects sort of either directly try to embrace AI. Like Adobe, I think is probably a good example of somebody that just dove right in and tried to do their best with it. And Houdini has really focused on usability and treating AI as a tool. And that's not just as of last night. It's been going on for a couple of years now. And I think they have had a very metered approach to rolling these tools in, but they haven't blocked them. Some of the DCCs have really kind of taken a little bit of an anti-AI stance, and Houdini has really started and continues with, it's a tool. We're going to put it in the tool chain. We're going to make it, so you can use it. And I think that's huge. And then the other thing to point at, the Vulkan viewport. Everyone's kind of shifting to Vulkan right now. Blender now supports everything it has supported, CUDA as well as Metal and everything. But they just added Vulkan, and Blender having Vulkan, Houdini having Vulkan. Those are secret backdoors to suddenly this is now going to work extremely well on a lot of different hardware. It's going to work better on Linux. It's going to work on Android. It's going to work on iOS, not just Mac OS. I know this is a Houdini news story, but Blender is now on the iPad because of Vulkan. And so I'm not saying, I'm excited to see Houdini on the iPad, but it is more about moving away from single vendor kind of, vendor locked workflows and really opening it up to more hardware, more operating systems, more interoperable. And I think, you can't look away from Vulkan. It's a big deal.
And they're coming after EmberGen, right? Too, because with their real time simulation and things like that. Yeah.
That's good to see them.
Yeah,
EmberGen gets an honorary mention for sure.
Yeah,
doing
they're
some
awesome.
Cool stuff.
Easy to use.
So next highlight. This morning,
like 15 minutes ago.
15 minutes ago, GPT-5. So blisteringly new, we haven't had a chance to do proper research on it. But I know that they're pointing towards less of the issues that we've had with AI, less hallucinations, less of those kinds of artifacts, more better quality, pushing into the agentic realm, which to me is a very interesting one. I'm not sure if they're building like workflow kind of tools in there, which I know other people are, and we'll get into that in a minute. But
I don't know if it's live or not because, as you said, this is like super breaking. But the plan is that everyone is on GPT-5. So unlike every other sort of update that everyone, including themselves, has done to date, where it's sort of like the newest, hottest model is just for pro users that are paying, this is everyone is on GPT-5 as of either right now or imminently, that's a pretty big deal. It's going to cost them a lot of money because it's a more power hungry, more compute hungry model, but it's an interesting move, and I think it'll play out well for them.
Yeah. Yeah, they also just released an open source, right? Open source chat.
Two. Yeah,
Two of
100,
them. Okay, yeah,
120 billion and a 20 billion, and the 20 billion will fit in 16 gigs of VRAM. So it'll run on mobile devices. It runs
Yeah.
local. The 120 billion one, I think it's GPT-4-ish equivalent, but that requires 80 gigabytes of VRAM.
Oh,
So that will not run on any GPU that any person owns at
Yeah.
home. I believe an H100 has that much VRAM, but it might be an H200. So the 120 billion parameter model, it's basically a local run it yourself open source
it's crazy.
GPT-4. The 20 billion model, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of apps rolling out, sort of like a local AI that you can train yourself and or at least refine yourself. So that's a big deal too.
Yeah.
It's funny that OpenAI took this long to do something open.
Earning their name, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we'll see. We'll see.
VO3 JSON prompting. That's been a hot topic. I'm about to drop a video on that any minute as soon as I get back to my edit suite. Thoughts?
Well,
I got some.
Tim's going to be demoing it, so for sure.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to me. I mean, Ed, you and I talked about this, and I mean, JSON's just a file format. There's ways to do it. I did some testing, and I mean, it's cool. It like works, but it's not very different from structured prompting.
Right.
But the strength that it comes into is that with AI, you can kind of have both that stuff going on where you can have JSONs and there you have a way to transfer data and to utilize it in other ways through code, and you can have that programmable and you can have interaction with that on a user end. And I don't think people talk much about that end. They're just like pasting JSONs.
Well,
that's what my video is about. The interesting part is not necessarily the JSON is making it better because it's just all tokens at the end of the day to the model, but it helps you be more organized and it helps you deal in the currency of organized information in some very interesting ways. I think being able to segment parts of your collection of input data and throw that around in interesting ways.
Because that's the thing, right? I think if you structure your prompt in the same way that the JSON file interacts with it, you're going to get similar results. But in that same way, you can start to, as I mentioned, you can start to have inputs and outputs and things that go further than just pasting a JSON prompt into VO.
I see a lot of over prompting where people sort of they prompt images and videos the way they talk to ChatGPT, and so people don't realize that every single word, including commas, and other punctuation, is a token. And so instead of just man and then building on that and refining it, people will go, a man, a being a token that will slightly vary the the result, and they'll be overly descriptive. So the thing to me about JSON is it kind of on a human level makes you think in shorthand or speak in shorthand, where you're just putting tokens in versus writing a sentence that hopefully describes what you want. Because I think people are in the process of doing structured prompting still using punctuation and and sort
flowery
of
language.
And being polite.
Sounds good to a human, but it's unnecessary for the AI. It doesn't
exactly
need that. It's like cut to the chase. Come on, go on. What are you talking about?
And so I'm actually super pro on the JSON prompts because I think there's so few people that are prompting precisely, and and I think they're just the reason it takes so long to get what you want a lot of times is because you've overprompt.
I like it too. I actually can read it better, and some people don't like reading it as much. I like reading it better because of the way my brain works. There's a lot of questions going on inside my brain about that. Anyway, we probably pick up the pace to get through these.
We got a lot to cover.
Points. Moon Valley have made a brand new model and suite of tools going after the two problems that everyone cares about the most in AI: control and copyright. Trained on licensed material and with quite a lot of controls that are allowing you to be able to essentially add keyframes to imagery and use those as inputs or to paint on imagery. And we're seeing that appear in a few places, but Moon Valley is certainly going after that. Google Genie 3.
Pretty smart. This is getting cool.
Hmm.
This is where stuff, Tim, when you said, getting nervous or scary. This is scary stuff, but I'm extremely excited about this. Just real time generating interactable, explorable worlds. I think this is what to me, video games are going to both be the most threatened in their current processes and the most benefited in new sort of processes and capabilities, where I think we're absolutely headed towards a AAA game being a entirely generated rather than real-time rendered thing. um, it solves the AAA problem, which is how expensive it is to model everything down to the cigarette butts in a GTA, scale open world game, where AI definitely allows you to prompt and generate the things that, to a certain degree, it matters that there's something there so it looks like a real environment. But does it really matter that you've got really clean topology on that cigarette butt that's in the corner that's 4 pixels? Does it really matter that you spent a day on the textures to really nail the use? There's some lipstick on the thing. So I think we're going to see things like this really start to take over in the games world, where instead of $250 million mostly spent on modeling and texturing and layouts and everything, and shift a lot of that money into more rapid iteration on the gameplay, uh, you know, level building being a lot quicker and stuff like that. So I'm super excited about this stuff.
Yeah, this is where I see immersive in VR too getting pretty wild as well. Like just being able to immerse
Yeah,
yourself and be like, I want to do
yeah,
this, and like just like building something out in
yeah.
real time and like,
This is the
yeah,
holodeck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
I
This is
like,
mean,
wild. This is wild looking at this.
yeah. And if there's one, if you click on the right arrow there, there's one where it's walking around in a no, just on
Oh,
the, yeah, there. Yeah, if you click that, keep going. This one's pretty cool. Keep going. There's one where it's like looking down. Keep going. I mean, these are all cool. Keep going. No, that's it.
th-
It might be on a different page, but there's one where it's somebody walking through down a like muddy lane that has puddles of water, and then the camera looks down at the feet, and the
oh yeah, I
feet
saw
are
that.
interacting with the water. It's stunning.
just
It's
imagining being able to tool around in what looks like live action.
Hmm.
It just blows my mind.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
if, by the way, if anybody has questions out there in the studio audience, please feel free to drop them in. We will do our best to get to them. And coming back to the news, Comfy UI
Comfy
desktop
UI.
version.
Yeah, it's easier to install than it ever has been. I had to reinstall one yesterday, and it took about 3 minutes to reinstall Comfy UI on a machine. It takes longer to download the models, but um, and it works on Mac now. Not all the models work on Mac, and it's certainly not as fast as a high-end NVIDIA for a lot of things. But uh, Comfy UI has never been easier. I have some gripes still, but generally it is better than it's ever been.
Yeah, and their way to like just work with workflows that have missing elements as well, and just easily update that. So you can just, if
That's
you load up a workflow that doesn't have something, it just pops up a
yeah.
thing, and you can click and download right in there, and
That's
it's like so
that's
much easier to manage.
that's one of my
It's like
gripes. It doesn't always
vibe
work.
noding.
No, it doesn't always work. Nope.
When it works, it's magic.
Yes. Yeah.
N8N. That
Ooh.
is, we had a meetup this week in LA. I'm going to pop through to another tab here. N8N is a really cool platform for wiring together all kinds of things, logic and models, and pretty much anything that you could want to build in terms of a logic tree. But it has these really cool features in it with things called AI agents, which is the buzzword of the decade or the year, maybe. AI agents, to me, are wrapping AI machine learning into logic, which is typically software engineering, or in this case, more of a kind of user friendly workflow builder, which isn't code, and it means you can plug these things together. So if something happens, your agent can go off and use a tool to do something, make a decision on what tools that it's going to use, and then produce some kind of result at the end. It's a very fancy kind of function in programming terms.
I don't know if you ever used if this then that, but this feels like what they wanted to be, because if this then that never really had an ML AI layer that could kind of do a lot of heavy lifting for you. You had to really program your own workflows, and it seems like this is what if this then that should have been 15 years ago, and definitely wants to be when it grows up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot more to say on that, but in terms of why I think it's cool, we'll do some more videos on that are just specifically about that. But if you want to build an AI agent, for me, it's the probably the most easy way I've seen to do that. If you want to do that, I've been using it for about a year and built all kinds of things that help this CGPro community do more of what it wants to do. So I want to get through to our highlight for the week. We have
we got a
runway Aleph. We already kind of touched on that
just a tiny bit. I think we could speed round through a bunch of these. I think Aleph is really interesting. There's a lot that's happening in a lot of different image and video generators now that are really focused on sort of human-centric, I guess, inputs, ways to control the generation that are not comfy UI, obscure, workflows where you're trying to kind of like really heavy hand stuff. And Aleph and and even Vase and Context and all of them are really starting to kind of focus on, and VO3 as well, just allowing users to kind of like just mark stuff up or type in simple prompts, and they're really starting to layer on the multimodal AIs where they have an ML that can analyze an image and classify it and segment it and do all these different things. So you can just say make the man's hat red, and it's able to analyze the image and go, oh, there is a man, oh, there's a hat, oh, it's not red, this is what red is, make it red. And so they're definitely starting to make things a lot better. And adding all those secondary stuff too, background removal and infilling and all that
things.
And yeah, that's what's exciting for this for me, is because once somebody takes it's an API now, so you're able to access it through their API. So you could build a tool in Nuke to like have this integrated right in there, working with your footage directly inside there, generating, fixing shots right inside, and getting that stuff. But yeah, I haven't seen that done yet, so I would love to like look into building something to like work with that and doing that. So it's cool once people who actually work with this stuff on that level start developing tool bases.
Give it 2 days.
Yeah,
I would say give it a week, but give it 2 days.
Yeah.
Next one, Genie 3. That's an easy one because we already did it. Episode 1. People, don't be perfect. Just get it done. Spark 3D.
So this is one of many kind of image to 3D options, I guess. It's kind of interesting. This one sort of seems to almost have voxels as one of its intermediary steps, where it sort of imagines a voxel shape and then meshes that voxel volume, and definitely really good results. I know a couple people are already using it to surprising effect. Like anything, it's obviously not going to just take a single 2D image and give you a AAA video game or major blockbuster movie grade 3D model, but it is impossible to ignore these 3D generators, especially for what I was just talking about with, if you've got a scene that has to have 800 models in it, and the camera's going to be across the room and only 4 models matter, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of stuff where it's just Spark 3D and the other generators filling in all the stuff that doesn't actually matter. It matters that it's there, but it doesn't really need 2 days of human effort for that chair that's outside in the other room to really be carefully modeled. So I think for the things that matter, that they exist but don't matter that they be really precise, clean topology, rigged for animation, etc., we're going to see this just take over, a huge amount of work.
Does it texture in UV, or
Yeah.
is it more? Oh, it does. Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it can generate those textures.
Oh, nice.
So it can either be texturing, sort of kind of semi-projecting the input images to to basically texture with the input image, or you can do some generative stuff as well. It's all this stuff is going very multimodal, where the inputs can be more than just text or more than just a 2D image, and it's pretty flexible. So it's good stuff.
Cool.
Dreamcube.
Dreamcube is interesting. Dreamcube basically makes a skybox, a cube map, a 360-degree image, but in its processing, it's developing depth maps, and it's actually generating things at different depths in different passes. So the nearer stuff is being generated in its own pass. And they're kind of saying, it makes these interactive worlds. If you look at the videos, the cameras don't move; they just pan around. These are RGBD skyboxes. They're fancy. They're good. They look good. There's definitely a lot of control, and the stuff they're showing already is looking really good. So I'm not going to knock it in any way. They're not really generating explorable worlds, but they are generating really good stuff for VR. Skyboxes and stuff like that for games, things that are a little further away. So it's a good thing, but it's definitely not. It's not as good as some others.
Hey, next one up is Hanyuan. It's a big one.
Yeah, that one's. I mean, this is one that I have not dug in personally enough to be able to speak, from personal experience with it. But it's a very similar, sort of aiming for 3D meshes and textured meshes and editability and all of that. So,
did a pretty good job.
Yeah,
tested it and running it through a Comfy UI workflow and being able to create 3D models. It works. It's it's a thing that you can do that with on your own computer, and it's crazy the stuff that's coming out of China. Really crazy how open it is and how free they're making it. It's bananas.
This is the scary stuff. When you want to talk about scary AI, this is the scary stuff.
Well, we got some of that coming.
Scary good.
TuneIt. If that's how you say it.
I think it's TuneIt. I think I'm excited for it, but I don't yet know where this one's going. So it's kind of using AI for networking effectively. So this is more under the hood glue, and I think just like anything, I don't know. Without wide adoption, it's useless, right? So the question is this going to really become the PyTorch of networking, where just everything gets a lot easier? And are we going to be able to use this in a powerful way, or is it going to be just kind of an interesting tech exercise? And I think adoption is really the only thing that's going to decide which side of that it lands on.
Well, I think we're going to have to talk about some of these other models in another show, because our whole entire advertised theme has not been touched. But let's jump ahead to that, and I am going to move us across to our vibe coding section, which is what we brought here people here for.
This is supposed to be vibes.
Yeah,
it's a vibe.
We've been vibing too much already. So, Andy, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, let me pop this open.
We will probably go slightly long on this first show. Stick around for the next 15 minutes if you want to check out the vibe coding.
So this is the tweet that started it all. This is February 2nd of this year. There's a couple of things that are really important, I think, to point out about vibe coding. You can read this, and actually we'll paste here. I'll paste this URL so you can read this You can read this at your leisure if you want, unless did Jackie already put that in? No, here it is. There it is. The things that are really important to highlight about vibe coding that are really getting lost in the mix, and it's the same point that needs to be made about Midjourney and all these image and 3D and video generators, which is vibe coding is not replacing professional software developers, software engineers. It is using AI, using LLMs specifically to do things that are not worth the professional's time to do. It's for doing silly little things that Andres Karpathy is obviously a very very talented, experienced, and capable software developer. The fact that he's the one that named vibe coding should really point at how to think about vibe coding. There's a lot of people kind of pushing back on Midjourney and all the image and video generators as well as vibe coding, saying you couldn't ship a product you make in that. You can't, it doesn't produce code that's optimized. It doesn't produce code that's maintainable. That's not the point. The point of vibe coding is to do something silly, something stupid, something that is helpful to you, tools for yourself, or even it could be, but you could vibe code something as simple as just give me a command line, just give me a script that will take 10,000 photos, rename them, and put them in folders. Something that is certainly would take you a long time to code that unless you're a pretty senior software developer, and it's just those things that aren't totally worth doing. This tweet contains so much important, good sort of perspective on what vibe coding is and isn't, but the basic gist is that you are instead of being a software engineer, software developer, a coder, you're more being an idea person who is talking to a coder. So this is the nightmare of every iOS developer turned into an automated process, which is somebody has a good idea for an app, but no ability or experience or knowledge to pull it off. So they go find somebody and describe what they want to make to them. And sometimes that turns into a good app, and often that turns into a terrible experience. So vibe coding is not for it is not for real software developers, real engineers. There's the AI tools are for them for assisting, but vibe coding is not. Vibe coding is for those people's personal projects and silly things that don't matter. So, figure best way to do anything is to show it. There's kind of three different ways to do vibe coding. You can do it straight in any of the chat, Claude, ChatGPT. I've got Gemini open here as well. So you can just do it in the web interface where you're just talking to it, and just like you would ChatGPT, just saying like, hey, make me a Python script that makes a bunch of folders, or does this, does that, and it's very conversational and it's cool. The problem with those, and I'll demonstrate this in a second, is that often you have to copy and paste that code into a file and save that file and then execute that file, and then if there's a problem, you have to copy and paste that that error, or describe that error, say like, hey, you're not naming the folders correctly, you should be doing this, you're doing that. So using the sort of the web-based chat interface LLMs to do vibe coding, it's a little slower. It's very accessible, and that's what I'm going to show in a second, which is awesome, and it's how I would recommend everyone that's been thinking about trying it out should try it out. The next level, sort of beyond that, is getting a software development and an IDE, an interactive development environment like Visual Studio Code. There's some very specific ones now that are very focused on vibe coding. Cursor is a fork of VS Code that is very AI focused. Kiro is a new one. I'll show all of these in a second. Those are the sort of the semi-offline version. They're, instead of being entirely on the web, this is now an agent. It's technically an MCP. It has access to your local files. It can read and write. And generating code in these is a lot better. It's faster. It's easier. You can say, make me a Python script that does this, and then you can execute that script, and it sometimes can actually see the output of the log and go, oh, hang on, I see that error. I see what I did wrong. I can fix that. And also with all of these, there's a thing called a context window, which is basically how many characters it is keeping in memory for this chat. And it's not characters, it's sections of words. It's how many tokens. With vibe coding, you hit those limits extremely quickly. sometimes in minutes, depending on how complex what you're doing is, but often, within a half hour or so. The problem when you run out of size in the context window is that the LLM loses. It's like the Men in Black, the memory eraser. They immediately forget what they did, what you talked about. And so there's tools that can kind of help that. Claude has some great ones where you can kind of have these documents that are sort of like style guides almost, or guide for it. And then the third layer, the kind of getting away from vibe coding, starting to get into actual coding assistants that real professionals use, are the ones that are more built into the command line itself. A lot of people are really singing the praises of Claude Code. Gemini works the same, where you're not in a development environment anymore. You're not really chatting. It's much more giving commands to an LLM in a command line. I'm not going to show those at all, but I'm going to dive in really quickly. So Claude, everyone kind of knows Claude. Hopefully, Claude and ChatGPT very similar. You just you just talk to it. So one of the things that's pretty awesome, they know C++, they know Objective C, they know Swift, they know Python. They're trained on most modern languages. The thing that's pretty cool about WebGL is that they can actually render it in real time. And I'm going to show that really quickly here. So in Claude, this is just a new chat. And I just said, make a WebGL app that has a blue canvas of 512 by 512, that's pixels, and put a slowly rotating red square that follows under the mouse cursor. So this is now going to generate an HTML document. And that HTML document is going to be, depending on what I've asked it to do, it might be importing libraries. A lot of the stuff I've been doing with WebGL involves particles and other 3D. So it'll import 3.js, one of the libraries that does a lot of that. You can see it here on the right. It's just generating that. The point of vibe coding is not to develop good things. It's to very quickly, rapidly iterate on things. So here we go. We got a blue 512 by 512 canvas. This is following my mouse cursor. So now I can just go make the cursor square flash red, green, blue in a loop of 1 second each, and have the background do the same with an opposite color. Let's see what it comes up with. So you're not trying to develop software with vibe coding for the most part. You're trying to test things. You're trying to make something quick that does, you're more focused on the output. What does it look like? What does it do? The thing I've been using this for a lot is building little interactive prototypes that test out different forms of interactivity, where I'm not really worried. Oh, here we go. So it has developed an error. So I'm just going to tell it error. Error. Let's see. So I'm not even going to look at the code. I'm not even going to try and find out what's wrong, because the point of this is not to develop software. The point of this is to test. If this was an interactive prototype that I was developing, I'm trying to figure out gameplay. I'm not even really trying to figure out the aesthetics of anything. I really don't care. Like this is something I could do. I'm not a very good software developer. This would take me a couple days probably to research the syntax and to figure out, what it's doing, in terms of where the actual code is. Where is the actual code when it's got this window open? There it is. Yeah. This is within my reach as a not really software developer. I could absolutely be developing this, but I'm not trying to make code. I'm trying to make an interactive prototype.
On a vibe.
I'm trying to vibe. I'm just going with the flow. And you saw, like, I didn't look at the code. I didn't diagnose the problem. I just copy and pasted the error and just said, fix this. The pushback on this is, as I said earlier, real professionals are going to go, this is garbage. This is like, look at this code. It's the same mentality as people that look at, a pretty interesting image out of Midjourney and just go, there's 4 fingers. Of course, this is unusable. It is not about replacing software developers. It is about doing things that require software to do silly, unimportant things. This would never turn, what I just demonstrated here would never turn into an actual app. I would never hand this code over to somebody and say, you'd probably just have to clean it up. What I would do is I would refine the gameplay. If this was, this is obviously not a good game, but I would refine the gameplay and get to something that is both fun to do and is generally doing what I want to do. And I would show that output to a real development team. And I would say, let's break this down. This prototype that I have now, I didn't waste time on the how of making this work. I focused all my time on the what of what should it do. And
you're testing ideas. Yeah.
You're
not trying to finish it. Do you have other shares? I want to make sure Tim has.
No, let's show Tim's version, because I'm just going to click. We'll toss these in the chat, but this is what Google's AI Studio version looks like. Again, it doesn't have a real time. I just gave the same base prompt into this. The problem with this is it's really good at explaining it. It's not good at, like, now I have to copy and paste this into a file and then put that file in a browser. So it's not as interactive as this is. This is very interactive in Claude. And then same deal in ChatGPT. It just gives you the code. You have to copy and paste this local. Kiro and Cursor and Gemini Code in VS Code, and I'll toss all of these into the chat right now. These are the IDEs. These are the sort of the next level up, and I've found them to be much better than the web-based ones, even than Claude. Not just because they show you your stuff, but because they're actually touching files on your actual disk. When you do run out of room in the context window, you are able to start a new chat without having to kind of take 10 steps back and teach it what it has already learned. I've encountered a lot of errors where it solved a tricky problem with multiple WebGL canvases and then, ran out of context. And then when I started the next chat, it had forgotten what it had just learned. And so half of the next chat was just getting back to where we just were. I'll throw these into the chats, these links. But Tim, we should take a look at your
Cool.
Yeah, let's go to Tim next. Just right before we do, we got a quick question from the audience, which was somebody asking about if they are using API for OpenAI and ChatGPT, do they have to pay twice, essentially? And currently, my understanding is that you do. If you use ChatGPT as a wrapper for OpenAI, and you're using OpenAI as an API in Comfy or anywhere else in NAN, then you do have to pay 2 subscriptions.
So yeah, what I've noticed too, inside Comfy UI, you can purchase credits, Comfy UI credits, and then they have API nodes that one is ChatGPT, so you can actually use that, and you pay credits, or your credits get deducted for Comfy UI's basically membership. So you don't necessarily need to sign up for 2. And this is with a lot of the API nodes in Comfy UI. Like you can use Runway, you can use I don't know, Luma, I think. Yeah, but you basically, it's a great way to test out different API services without having to sign up for the subscriptions. So yeah, it's a way you can use it, because you can use Gemini, you can use ChatGPT, and you can kind of feed prompts in and get it to like interpret an image. With ChatGPT, you can get it to restylize an image and do all that stuff, and you don't have to sign up necessarily for a ChatGPT.
The cheat code also, I'm super cheap when it comes to all of these AI services. I very rarely actually pay monthly subscriptions. I try to fit my testing into the free tier or find an offline, Comfy UI sort of local version of it. Pretty much all of the IDE based ones, Cursor and now Kiro and Gemini, they're trying to get users. And so for now, they're in a first one's free kind of pusher mentality. And the bad news with that is that will end and then turn into $200 a month, subscriptions. The good news is they're going to have a competitor that will spin up and be free for some amount of time, while they're trying to steal their user base. So Kiro right now, there's a wait list. You can't just get in, but Kiro is free because it's from Amazon, and Amazon is hosting Anthropic's compute. And so Amazon is basically eating the compute cost right now for Kiro. So if you can get into Kiro, that's a great way to go. Similarly, Google with Gemini in VS Code is eating a lot of the cost. So you can get a lot more for free right now with those IDEs.
Enjoy the 0% credit card bounce around game while you can. Tim,
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna share
take it to
what
the
I
vibe
did.
code.
I was gonna share stuff I had done in Cursor, but I ate all my credits, so I built my own app in using Claude. So let me just share here, and hopefully it will pop up. So this is kind of what I built here. So I was going with the trend of people using annotations on images so that they could basically drive a VO generation via instructions that they put on like the first frame of an image. So what I did here is I'll just show a rough example. So I have the ability to go and I can go and draw. I built this little app and I can go in and draw. Like, why not do this in Photoshop? Because I didn't want to. I wanted to see if I could build a little app myself to go in and do this. So I can undo, I can add a new box if I want to. I can, yeah, add an arrow. I just wanted to do something where I saw what people were doing and I'm like, okay, I want to build a tool to do exactly this so I know that what I'm doing is gonna work how I want to do it. So essentially the idea is you go in here, you annotate an image, and then I can take and download this image and I can put it inside of VO here. And you'll see my first frame. I have the annotation, and then what it's basically done, I've shared the video as well. I don't know, Jackie, if you have the link for that, but if you post that, I've shared the video where you can see this. But essentially, I don't know if it's going to play cleanly, but yeah, so this guy, it's not playing the cleanest here, but the guy pulls up to the gas station. He puts his feet down, which is super crazy. And then he stops. Exactly. And I told the camera, I want the camera to track in. I want the man to ride the bike up to the gas pump. And all I used for my my prompt in VO was immediately delete instructions in red and blue on the first frame, and then execute those instructions. And then blue instructions are the camera movement. So from that, it picked up everything I needed to do, and I didn't need to put in a prompt. So I'm kind of directing how the shot is executed just via like a diagram and kind of telling it. And that's super cool. I found that's like a really cool way to interact with shots. So I just wanted to build I wanted to vibe code out a little tool to do that. And how I did that was in Claude. So I have my whole thing here. But yeah, it essentially, let me see if I can put that. I don't know why it's showing you this whole thing. But yeah, this is essentially, I started out by saying I want to create a diagram-based sketch tool to take an AI image and help guide it. Basically, it's just a tool to add overlays in image and save it. I can add arrows, potentially boarding directions and stuff like that. So it just started off like that. It was really broken. It didn't do what I wanted it to do. And then I started adding like new functions like a color picker system, stroke width control, fixed transforms, the ability to rotate all of this stuff, right? So again, this isn't going to be like a final app or anything, but it's like an idea that if I wanted to add something like this to like a tool I was building, I would have that idea to be like, okay, to the dev, I need these functionalities. I need it to do this, as Andy was kind of talking about. This idea
You
that
can
I want to,
prototype.
yeah, you want to
Basically prototype.
prototype this out and
Yeah.
like better UX and stuff like that. And then yeah, I just got to a point where I can tell it how like I need it installed. It's a React app, so it's an app that requires a bit more setup and it's a bit more complex, but you can be like, okay, give me instructions on how I would run this and what do
Yeah.
I need to install and like how do I work with this. And I learned a lot about like how apps actually work and how these like web-based apps actually function, just by vibe coding. It's like stuff I might have not have understood before. But yeah, like the whole idea is that
You can find out about libraries and things that you would be off Google searching before,
Totally.
or
yeah,
asking people like what
Totally.
framework would be able to make
yeah,
something like this.
exactly. So like yeah, again, I can just like go in, I can create this, quickly go to text, type in something like man rides up to gas station, and then what I can do, the app is not great, so I can't select the text without having that out of the way, but I can select that, scale it up, can move that over or keep that there and then move this back over. And then I
Easy
can go
peasy.
in, yeah, and I can go in and draw the arrow if I want to there. And then I can do more stuff like blue arrows if I want. but yeah, it's quick, right? So I can just do exactly what I wanted to do very quickly. I don't have to have a Photoshop license. This literally took probably like 15 minutes to get it to where I wanted it to do. And now I can just download that image, and then I can go and just use it as, yeah, like a first frame to go and, yeah, put into my thing here. So there's the sketch. I open it, I crop it, and then yeah, once this all loads up, I'll just be able to go in and run it and quickly just jump between. I have an in-browser app that runs alongside my in-browser flow session, and I can just do that. But the next step would be to integrate Vio's API directly into that tool, right? So I could just take
Right.
that frame and then just run it right from there and get a video that downloads of my thing. Yeah, that's kind of what I worked on and just wanted to show off.
Something that I've found is really helpful with these, especially the more chat-based, web-based ones like Claude and ChatGPT, is to start by saying, do not generate any code. I'm going to describe the app that I want to build, and I want to discuss it with you, and I want to develop the requirements together. And then when we're agreed on what we're going to be making, then you can start generating code. So you kind of it wants to just start generating code. And the thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is if it generates a 500 line thing very quickly, that's potentially thousands of tokens, have just been eaten up, and so your context window is already filling up with garbage, and you haven't even agreed on what you're building yet. So it can be a good thing to kind of basically get it to use it more like you would use ChatGPT to generate a requirements doc, and then use it for vibe coding based off of that. And there's a lot of people that are using Claude as the human interface and Gemini as the actual code generator. And so it's actually you talk to Claude and Claude supervises Gemini. So you're actually telling Claude to use Gemini via its API to actually generate the code. And then you're actually kind of adversarially putting two LLMs against each other. So you've Claude is your software manager, your PM, and then Gemini is your actual developer. And so you're really still then you're abstracting yourself another layer of just being the idea person at the top, saying this is what I want. But stuff like this gets so fast.
It's more getting towards the point, or that way of thinking is thinking more like software engineering, where you would typically go and talk to your client and find out what it is they want to do first, and have a whole bunch of design thinking at the beginning of the process before you even get anywhere near code. When I used to write code for a living, it got up to the point of being in charge of 400,000 line code bases, which was really hard to do at that point. It required a lot of learning and a lot of time. And it was, even before that, you would build UML diagrams for all the classes that you wanted to build. But before that, you were doing all sorts of interviews and this modeling that. I think the closer you get to, which is what you're describing, modeling that is modeling the process a bit better anyway, because you're actually thinking before you're doing, which is always, as a human being, generally a good idea. Sometimes it's a terrible idea, but
it will. It is important to underline that, like, this will generate garbage code, and as it runs out of context, I have had it completely. I was describing it like that GIF of a raccoon with cotton candy, and raccoons, they wash their food. So there's this GIF of a raccoon that had a piece of cotton candy, and it goes to wash it, and it dissolves. I have experienced more sort of, as I tried to build something and tweak as I ran out of context windows more and more. I've experienced as much that as I have success, where the LLM your code just dissolves in its hand, and it you need to version stuff, because it's going to at some point just get confused and either regress and continue to make the same mistake it's already solved 8 times, or just for no good reason, just overwrite the entire code with something that's vaguely like it was making, but has such significant changes that, now you're just like, so you do have to, very much don't use this on stuff that matters, because it's going to mess it up.
I am going to move us on to our next section in a second. I'm going to very quickly share my own version of this, but I want to give us a minute for our wrap up. But here we go. Let me just share my version of vibe coding, where I have a different version of this. This was the quick kind of experimental version. This is in Gemini, and just straight up Gemini using asking it to build some software, and what it does is goes into this mode where it gives you something like we saw just now with a preview window. There is a code window next to it, and my ask for this one, this is just a quick version of it, a different version I'm working on. This is like a node graph. This is something we should be all familiar with, probably having used Comfy and various other things. In this node graph, you've got nodes. You can add a node. You can connect up the dots between the nodes, and that all works pretty much. So within these nodes, you've got the ability to add a Python script in here and run it, and then you can hit run. It will go off and run it. You can see it running, and when it's finished, it actually runs the Python, and there you can see it because inside the Python it says print saving to folder. So it will actually do what it does in that little nugget, and it has a properties window, so you can click between these nodes. And this is all done in the same way, just expressing an idea and following through with it. And the interesting thing in here is when you're doing this, it will give you errors in here and give you a button, and you can just say, okay, fix it, which goes off and does what all software engineers have done for the last at least 20 years, which is like, error, don't really know what that means, chuck it into Google, find out, and then
Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow, bring somebody else's code back in, try and wedge it in. Not to say that's how all software engineering happens, but
That's
a lot
lot.
of it. So this is, closing the loop, making that all much quicker. And yeah, again, it's making code that I have not checked this very much in through the process, a little bit, because I used to be a software engineer.
I found that as you go on the left there, you can see it does a pretty good job of explaining what it has written. And I've personally learned, as you said, I've learned about APIs I didn't know about. I've, different libraries that, and it's just kind of like, oh, that's cool. But also, does learning the syntax of some of this stuff that you're going to use one time, you're going to develop an app in half an hour, use it for an hour or two to do the task that was going to take a day or two, and then you'll never do it again. Do you really need to deeply learn the syntax of that, or do you need to sort those images, or make those files, or do those annotations on the screen? So it is, vibe coding is so much more focused on the output than it is on the underlying code and the process. And
even humans have context windows. When we're working on something and you don't do it for a bunch of time, you find you don't necessarily keep all of that knowledge bound to you as intensely as you did when you were working on it.
That's what comments are for. And even comments, even if you're really good at comments, you're just like, what the hell? How did I figure this out? Like 2 months later.
Yeah.
It's fascinating though.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
funny.
Tim.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I used, when I was teaching classes, I'd always find myself going over time, and I was like, I wonder if there's a service to like have a timer that you can watch to see the sections you should be talking about. And I went, and it was like, okay, pay $100 like whatever, like $40 a month for this service. I'm like, I wonder if I can just make my own timer that's kind of like this one. And I went and did it, and within like 20 minutes, I had this like customizable timer that kept track of everything. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like
that's going to be the fascinating thing, is like what little things, like at this point, what used to, the beginning of visual effects, what used to cost an extraordinary amount of money, millions of dollars to produce, can now be done by people with way less skill and way less equipment and way less experience. I think with software engineering, or the things that we can make, it would be the same. If everybody can do this and vibe code something, inherently, if everybody could do it, it's not valuable. But people will take these things and do extraordinary things with them, and that will be things that the average person can't do, and that will be valuable.
And there's an element too. I've been on the image and video generation side for a while. I've been calling it doodling, where there's things that we, as sort of more professional, trained, image generators, artists that can, use computers or pencils to make images. We do it for fun sometimes. We doodle. We make sometimes we have these skills and we doodle, and we're not really trying to make art. We're not trying to make content. We're not trying to make something for somebody else. We're literally just doodling. And I've found vibe coding to be really the software development version of that, where you really are, you're not trying to build something, you're not trying to be part of a team, you're not trying to, yeah, you're just sketching, you're just, you're vibing. It's a good it's a good name, but I think it's the same general thing where it's like, in the same way that Hollywood is totally finished because Runway now does text to video really well, Claude generating code is about as dangerous to real software development as that is, which we all know it's not. It's a tool. It's going to accelerate some stuff, but I've already started to see vibe coded websites, and you could tell immediately that it was a vibe coded website because it doesn't work. There's like broken stuff everywhere, and it's it's not reactive, so it doesn't reformat properly. But also, like it doesn't. But it doesn't matter. Those are websites. Like that's not a product. That's not an important professional output. That's not a. It's just a vibe. It's got a place.
Before we wrap today, we've gone like a good half hour over our very unlikely goal of trying to do this show in 1 hour.
maybe that's what we do. Every week we could just get a little bit tighter.
Maybe. But tell us, if you're watching this and you got to this point, tell us what you would like it to be. We're serious. We would love to hear what you thought was great, what we could improve, what we missed. So the last little section we've got is our gadget share.
Oh, okay. Let's make this super quick, because I can also super quick share
gadget of the week.
I thought I was in charge of the music.
Sorry.
Gadget of the week.
You're holding the gadget. Maybe you can't do both at the same time. No. Obviously can.
So recently just picked up this used. This is a first generation depth camera. It's called. It's from a company called Luxonis. It's called the Oak D. It's part of a generation of new sort of machine vision, robot vision, depth sensing cameras. It is not like solely unique, but the reason I'm excited about this is that they're starting to put some processing on these devices. Traditionally, when you have a Kinect or a RealSense or some other kind of like depth sensing camera, it's capturing as much data as it can, and it's streaming all of that data to a computer for analysis. Sometimes it's into a pile of code, OpenCV, et cetera. Sometimes it's into software like Touch Designer, but ultimately you're flooding your whatever it is, network, or even sending it over traditional video, HDMI, whatever. You're absolutely flooding the software on the receiving end with a lot of data it doesn't need. So what Luxonis is doing, and what this Oak D camera does, is you can actually load machine vision models onto the camera based on what you are interested in. So you could be object detection, you could be doing OCR, you could be doing skeleton tracking, hand tracking, all these different things. And the processing, so it's got stereo pair of depth cameras and an RGB camera. Some of them have time of flight, they're flashing an infrared thing or a structured light. But what it's doing is it's taking those video feeds and it's analyzing them, and it's only streaming over the USB-C out to your computer the data that you have asked it to, the model that you have uploaded to it, thus the data that you are wanting to get back from it. So the amount of data coming back from, you could have arrays of these cameras, is minuscule compared to the more traditional Kinect and RealSense pipeline, where it's sort of like, here's 4 cameras worth of data, lightly processed, probably compressed just so it fits in a pipeline. You do what you want with it. Instead, you are telling the camera, run this machine vision model on your inputs and just give me the skeleton. I just want XYZ 3D positions for every joint, and that's it. That is the amount of data that fits in, that fits in bits, like bytes, not kilobytes, not megabytes, not gigabytes. So the latency goes way down because the compute's happening on the camera. And then also the network traffic goes way down. So you can have dozens or hundreds of these. I'm personally super excited about this from the standpoint of real-time interactivity. The stuff I was just talking about with the WebGL is definitely aiming towards building large-scale 60-person, 100-person kind of real-time interactivity. And so that is my gadget of the week. I'm very excited about Oak D as a unpaid sponsorship.
Send us the sponsorship money in the mail. Thank you. If anybody would like to sponsor the show, reach out. If anybody would like to participate in the show, reach out. We want to make this a community-driven effort. Before we wrap, we have crazy corner. Maybe we're only going to get one thing into the crazy corner.
I got one. So let's watch Tim. Hopefully you haven't seen this before, so we can get your real-time reaction to this. This is a video that just went out. It's Unitree has made this robot dog that, for reasons that we will explore super quickly. Oh, they changed the name. They changed the name.
Yeah.
So this, when it was released, was titled the Stellar Hunter, as in the really good hunter. And they've changed it to the Stellar Explorer. So they've already gotten the feedback that we were going to give it.
In one day. We looked at this yesterday, and
it was the Stellar Hunter.
I can't call it that. Like that's so close to Terminator 2. You can't. Can you? They did. So they changed the name.
There's a Black Mirror episode about this thing, I think.
Verbatim. I mean, this is both impressive and terrifying. And when it was called the Stellar Hunter, it was more terrifying than impressive. But the thing about these two that I've noticed is the cost of these, specifically the robot dogs, but even the humanoid robots, is getting below $10,000. You know, it's getting even below $5,000 or even $3,000 for some of these.
I can't believe that part. Sorry, where the guy's jumping up and down on it.
Oh, just on his back, yeah. And then, and what was it? A 10-kilometer range with a concrete slab on his back. But the cost of these is so low now that, like, it's drone territory. That's good drone, you know, $3,000 whatever drone. That as a creative working in media and entertainment, I'm starting to get really interested about putting these into films. You know, putting these into short films, putting these into live experiences, even where what was previously only within reach of their, you know, the heavy.
Are you going to dress it up in the movie, or is it just going to be like that?
It depends on the genre, right? You know,
on the story.
It depends on the story. But the animatronics have been the exclusive domain of very high-end feature films and amusement parks. But we are getting now to the point where robot dogs and robot humanoids are not just accessible and available, but cheap. You know, like, you know, even $20,000 is, in the context of a film, very cheap for, you know, a humanoid animatronic. So, you know, we don't want
to see this anymore, where there's like actual people walking actual dogs. People will be walking.
No, this ad,
weird,
this Grammarly ad
spider instead.
So,
well, good share. Thank you. Excited and terrified about the future. This has been a really awesome experiment. Our episode 1 of CGPro Show. Thank you, Andy, for being here, as well as thank you, Tim, for being here. We appreciate our viewers as well. Thank you guys for joining us live, if you're watching this live. And again, if you would like to contribute, if you'd like to tell us what it was you enjoyed about the show, what you would like to see more of or less of, less robot spiders, more whatever else, I don't know. Stick a pizza on the back of that thing. That's all I'm thinking. A bunch of flowers.
I'm smelling co-host. You know, the robot dog is going to make. We're getting one.
We'll have one. We'll get 20 grand out of the cash machine in a minute. Go get one, and it's going to be sniffing Andy on the next episode. Thank you. We do mean it. We would love to hear from you if you've enjoyed this. What did you enjoy about it? What would you like to see that's different? Guys, any closing thoughts?
I'm excited to evolve this. Very, very excited to evolve this and figure this out.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like-minded people are going to be exploring this stuff, and as it creatively gets more accessible to people and it gets more in line with how that kind of functions, it's going to be really interesting to see. I'm excited.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We'll see you all on the next episode of the CGPro Show, episode 2.